Guys, as some of you have seen, that Lake Powell has just dropped its record low, almost in lockstep with Lake Mead, which happened, less than a week ago now. We've been watching that play out since May, almost tied together, which literally they are. Lake Powell, of course, is upstream from Mead. Now that Lake Powell, though, has reached its lowest level of all time, then the numbers are starting to crunch, and they're not getting put out correctly, not just by mainstream media and other folks, but even by some of the people in charge of the dams and how the information flows out. But the information is there if you dig, and you and I have talked about one of Lake Powell's big problems in a video maybe a month or so ago, and it was an article that came out from the Colorado Sun. Hang in there, we're about to get into it because it's critical for you guys there that depend on this water. Now, who else depends on it? Everybody downstream. This water goes where? To Lake Mead. Where does that water go? Exactly. Both hydro power and loss of drinking water, things like that. So we're going to get into it, guys. Hang in there. Now, we're going to dive into the numbers. I just want to give you a little bit of the takeaways from what we're going to look at. Again, it's the second largest U.S. reservoir. It hit a record low of 35.1991. Guys, today it's very close to 39.60, right in that area. This article is a couple of days old. But the Colorado River's decline threatens water supply and hydropower for millions in the West. Again, all the way, the water goes through me too. Federal authorities will soon announce water cuts for 7 states sharing the river's resources. Now, if you look at the NUSB of R reports, our Bureau of Reclamation, they have technically kicked that can down the road to January the 1st. It's like putting your head in the sand when you know that you're about to get run over by a herd of buffalo. Guys, because, and it's kind of a cowardly way to do it if you want to be honest about it, because their narrative is always, we don't want to panic the public. But do you realize that a slowed down version of a panic is a lot better than one that slaps you in the face? I guess that doesn't matter. Anyway, what they're saying is we're now at 35.19, again about 60. 35.19 was, or 90 was in the lowest ever, and it happened the same year, a few years back, that Lake Mead hit its lowest record until this week. Now, as you could tell by the thumbnail, guys, this is about incorrect numbers, and it's very dangerous because it is over 70% wrong on the final number itself. They have the data, they're just not putting it out. So again, the reservoir dropped to 35.19 on Saturday. Now, this came out Sunday via the Bureau of Reclamation. This is not like most of the news channels, and you can really do a search on this if you'd like, through mainstream media or through the Bureau or just whoever, and look at what they're saying about Lake Powell's low point, where it gets critical for the turbines. They're all still telling you the same lie, and it is a lie that's off by a large amount of percentage. It says, according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation published Sunday, it is now just under 30 feet. See that, guys? Away from the point at which its dams will no longer be able to generate hydropower. Look that up. I doubt you, unless you look at one of my videos, I doubt you will find any information other than this. And so it gives all the people involved, all the way from Powell through Arizona to California, it gives everyone involved a very narrow window. In other words, if I were to tell you it's 9 point something feet away, then you would realize how urgent this is, and look at the cuts that are now coming, or not coming, from Flaming Gorge up above Powell. And Lake Mead's starting to see it. Lake Mead is starting to have to decrease their output to keep their numbers stacked a little bit, because they understand what's about to happen to them too. And they are 4 feet plus away from losing hydropower. Almost 80% of all of the hydropower at Lake Mead will be gone. It will happen a little quicker than this, but this 30 feet 30-foot number, guys, is an old number, but they keep repeating it. And what happened, again, a couple of months ago, maybe not quite that long, I did a video about an article from the Colorado Sun. And what had happened, they started experiencing cavitation at Lake Powell already back then, a month ago. And so they realized then that would disintegrate the turbines. Water was getting too low. They had silt at the bottom, just like they do at Meade. Actually, that's why one of the reasons it was built, to stop Meade from filling up with the silt so quickly. Anyway, when it got down about 10 feet ago, to that point, they realized they could not let it drop any further than 3510. It's no longer what they were saying. In other words, it's 351992. That was Sunday. We're in the 60s. But they were telling us, and they still are at the 30 feet away, that at 3490, they have to cut the turbines off because it will tear up, it will destroy them, and I guess mothball them so that they can hope for snow in the future and let the rivers come back, all of that. You'll hear that. But this number is critical for you guys that are there. The record comes 9 days after downstream Lake Meade, the U.S.'s biggest reservoir, dropped to its lowest level since it was first filled 90 years ago. We are in uncharted territory, said Jack Smith, director for the Center for Colorado River Studies at Utah State University. Now, he has not went against this 30-foot narrative. And the way they describe Meade and Powell, it says they are essentially one gigantic reservoir separated by the Grand Canyon. They hold just under 60% of the total current water stored in the Colorado River Basin. The unprecedented decline of these vast bodies of water, which have been shrinking for more than 20 years, drives home the perilous state of the river that feeds them. We're aware of that, right? They are aware of it. But this false hope is very dangerous because it stops people from planning. If you've got a 9-point-something foot decline and you're losing a foot a week, you know, you guys think about it, and you're 9 weeks away from that happening if Flaming Gorge can continue its very weak upstream flow. And it mentions, again, the roughly 40 million people that need the irrigation, the drinking water, of course, industry, all of that, agriculture. But you've got 5 million acres of farmland across 7 states: California, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah. Way too much for one river, regardless. But that's what's happened. Everything's been overbuilt. The 40 million people will be affected because it is one system, simply separated, again, as they say, by the Grand Canyon. Now, of course, you got the irrigation drinking water, but one of the major concerns they have is the impact on energy generation. The force of the Colorado River turns the Glen Canyon Dam's 8 huge turbines. Remember, you've got more than that down at Lake Meade. You've got 17, but in just less than a month, they're going to lose all but 4, and all of those are on the Nevada side. If you look at the way the intake towers are at Lake Meade, 2 on one side, 2 on the other, the 2 on the left feed, and you tell by the transmission lines, the Arizona side, that will be completely wiped out at 10:35, which we're at 10:39 plus as we speak. But again, the force of the Colorado River turns the Glen Canyon's 8 huge turbines, producing enough electricity each year to power nearly 500,000 households. It's relied on by Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and Nebraska. Everything's tied together in this area, and it was a good plan if it had not been overdeveloped. Water storage and things like that, you wouldn't have had to have it this deep. But if you would have been able to control the greed of development, and the guys, what's happening with the development is a crime. But anyway, if that had been controlled, you wouldn't be at this situation anyway. But that's the way the cycle works. Now, the article goes on and repeats the lie. It says the reservoir could now be barreling toward minimum power pool at 3490. That is the 30 feet they're looking at, when water levels will be too low to spin the turbines and generate electricity. Guys, but it wasn't just my video. Back when Lake Powell started doing cavitation, everyone saw that, everyone noted. The federal government realized it. They're the ones that called the new level up, taking 20 feet off of the 3490 and leaving it at 3510. They cannot go to that low of level because they've done a little bit of damage to the turbines, saw the cavitation effects, and they can't go past that. Now there's a couple of scenarios. Think about it. They understand what acidification is just like you and I do. They understand that we got to understand that they're going to try to prop everything up as much as they can, for as long as they can, to prevent, again, what they call panic, which is, it has the opposite effect. But when they do this, it's something wrong with it. And again, it's that time of warning and the time given to you, the people in these areas, give the time you need to make your decisions, make your plans, down to a much shorter period of time. As a matter of fact, taking 2/3 of the time they're talking about here off the calendar. Now, the scary threshold is what they're calling it, still at the old number, will be reached this year unless extraordinary measures are taken. This is Brad Udall, a senior water and climate research scientist at Colorado State University. These include reductions in water releases from Lake Powell, in other words, shut its gates down, and upstream. So we're seeing that happen right now. You don't, unless you look at the charts almost daily, and I'll glance at them almost every day because it's part of what I do here, but you'll see that the numbers are changing really quickly in just the last week on what the dams are getting in, what they're cutting down, and it's what they've done is prop up Lake Mead from losing a foot a week to about half that because they're having to slow down their output going downstream through the hydropower they have left. It's already affecting them. You've got a lot of power loss as the water level at the top of the dam goes down. And the narrative, which I think is one of the most evil things you could ever do to a population, is coming from the government. Again, experts, and it's not just the government, but experts don't currently believe there's a risk of people's taps running dry. The Colorado River is a slow-moving crisis, they're saying, and many water managers have taken steps to prepare. You can prepare, you can do all the things you want to. If you don't get rain, that river's going back to the run-of-the-river status, and it will supply the same amount of people it did before people ever put a dam on that river. Now, let's go back into July when this report came out. I said maybe a month, guys. It's been July 6th, I think now. Time goes about pretty quick. This article was in the Colorado Sun. They should know a little about the river there. But then they said that supercharged bubbles are threatening Lake Powell's dam. Federal officials are battling to sustain water levels. Again, the cavitation destroys everything inside. And guys, going back to July 6th when the report came out, they were still up in the 3520 range, and they were experiencing damage of cavitation into the turbines and to the outlet channels. We talked about that pretty extensively in the video back then. But what will happen, and they're saying if the water level drops too far into the 35-10 foot range now, and the tubes fail due to cavitation, they know it's going to happen. They already saw it. The federal managers will have no safe way to release water downstream to millions of people. Now that includes, of course, Lake Mead. So they're caught between the bottom and the top. They can't drop safely below 3510. They cannot let it get to the 3490, that 30 feet. They have to stop it. But if it starts to cavitate, their only option is what they call a temporary backup system. The dam's lower outlet tubes were built again as this temporary system. They were never designed to handle high velocity, high-pressure water releases on a permanent basis. When the reservoir is low, the physics of the water flowing into these lower tubes drastically increases this risk of cavitation. In fact, during an experimental release, the Bureau of Reclamation already found severe pitting and structural damage to the pipe linings caused by the cavitation. So they're stuck. They can't go, they don't want to go below 3510 because it destroys the turbines. If they lock up the turbines, they will have to release through these outlets called the temporary backup system. Either way they will both fail. That big cavity, or the big temporary backup system, are these huge concrete line tunnels, and that water goes through there at 3,500 miles an hour, guys, and it eats away everything. They saw big chunks of concrete, leaving nothing but rebar in these outlet tunnels, and it was even eating away outside the rebar into the canyon walls themselves. And what that will do will force a full shutdown of Lake Powell until it rises enough, in how many years, who knows, that it could possibly breach the overhead outlets. You know, the outlets of all of the dams have one. If it gets too high, you got an emergency way to let it out. That would be the only way to handle the situation at all. So again, at 3510, it's going to become very critical on what they let in and what they let out. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of graphs. I don't want to get technical, but just to give you an idea of what they're going to be dealing with and what we're going to be seeing. Now, just quickly, here's Lake Mead, guys, and they were doing, let's see, when we last really did a detailed video on just about 2.16 feet every 14 days. They cut that in half. How did they do it? It hasn't been rain to do it. They cut out the necessary downflow from downstream. Look at the outflow, cubic feet per second right here, 9,815 cubic feet. But a lot of the times when you were starting to see the numbers in the red start to increase, they were letting out 11,000, 10, 13,000, 11, 11, 10, 9. But they have cut back a couple thousand feet per cubic second to try to stabilize this drop that's at 1039.77. Now, this was yesterday. It's a little lower than that. But they were trying to prevent this from going to 1035. It's on a downhill run. But what they're trying to do is maintain its level, cut hydropower out and water out, going downstream, Phoenix and those areas, and to maintain its level. Now, what's important to see is how is Powell, which is the top half of this, how is it handling it? And they're kind of doing the opposite thing. They are still trying to handle the demand from Lake Mead down below, but their outflow is 7,871. Now, you got a couple of rivers involved, and there's been some rain in the area. But look at their inflow from Flaming Gorge. It gets lower and lower, 942 on some days. So they're not getting much. They're putting out, even on a good day, twice as much as they're taking in. And so how is that going to affect the 9-point-something feet that Lake Powell has before there are real big problems with cavitation and turbine loss, possibly water loss? And so you've got to, if you're looking at a pair of scales, which one are they going to allow to collapse first? Mead has less time with less than 5 feet, and these numbers are going to change that we saw at Mead very quickly when the numbers of the outflow are forced to change to save Lake Powell from getting to the 3510 mark. Again, here 9.65 feet as of yesterday. How are they going to do it? Who will they sacrifice first? Either way, more than likely Powell, simply because Mead is larger. But Powell right now, well, except for one thing, let me back up. At 1035, the hydropower at Hoover Dam will drop by 80%. That 20% will go to the Nevada side, just to be clear. But you got a lot of people that rely on Lake Powell upstream also for hydropower. So they've got kind of a dual It's almost like a four-system balancing scale there, water, energy for both dams. One will have to be sacrificed before the other. Will they go ahead and let Powell open up, maybe increase its flow, double it, which will double the time that is cut out of the equation getting to 3510 to save Meade? Or would they cut the outflow here, save Powell, and let Lake Meade drop very quickly by the 4-point-something feet that it is dropping to now because of its cavitation? It's going to be interesting to see, but I just wanted to clear up those numbers a little bit. Everybody's saying 30 feet. Guys, at 30 feet, all hell is already broke loose at Lake Powell. We showed that, and most of you do remember that first video, I'm sure. So we got 9 feet there, plus change, and 4 feet at Lake Meade downstream. Things are changing very quickly, guys. And I've got a video. I've got to decide how to do it without getting in a lot of trouble, because we've been not told about quite a few things. But there's something else hiding in the background, doesn't really have to do with the dams, that is a giant in the room compared to what we're seeing in the Colorado River. So you know it's very important. But we're looking at it. Guys, it is, if you want to call it a reset that could happen very quick, that may be what you would call it. But a reset may not be the proper term, because there may be a lot of side effects from what we're about to see with the U.S. currency and the banking system. I've mentioned that we're burning through cash, or the data centers very quickly turning that cash that may not be valuable very much longer into physical assets, right? That's kind of like prepping, like you or I would do. You got a little extra cash, you got something you're not using, sell it, get some kind of water or solar or backup food, whatever. We understand the process, but we use our own money and not taxpayer money. That's a big difference to me. Anyway, we're watching it, guys. If I can put that video into something that makes sense, because it's probably an hour-long information, but it needs to be cut down and straight to the point. That's the way I would like to do it. So when I can, I will get that one up. But it is hundreds of times more dangerous than what you're looking at right now. It's a heads up, guys. Be safe.